Hello and welcome to biology video number 5. Today we're going to be talking about the building blocks of life. And by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to define and explain anabolism, catabolism, and metabolism, monomer versus polymer, the process of dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis. You should be able to identify the 4 key classes of biological molecules and explain the difference between organic and inorganic molecules. To begin with, let's look at metabolism. What we have here is a picture of many of the metabolic processes in our body. Not all of them, but many of them. You'll be glad to know, though, you don't have to memorize or know all of these metabolic processes, but we're going to begin to explore some of them throughout Biology 12. So what exactly is metabolism? Very often we talk about metabolism. Someone might say, oh, I have a fast metabolism, or I have a really slow metabolism. They're usually referring to whether or not they burn off calories quickly. It's not really the correct use of metabolism. Metabolism is actually a much bigger concept than just how fast we burn calories. So if we look at metabolism in its more correct sense, it is all of the chemical reactions that occur within a cell or organism. As we are in a single cell, when we talk about metabolism, we're generally talking about all of our cells considered together. But there's really 2 types of reactions that occur within metabolism. The first is called anabolism. Sorry guys, I lost my pen. Anabolism. This equals any and all reactions that use smaller, what we call building blocks, smaller chemical constituents, to build larger molecules. One thing that might help you remember this is if you think about someone who takes anabolic steroids. While foolish, their purpose is to build muscle. So anabolic makes things bigger. In contrast, we also have catabolism. Catabolism includes any and all reactions that break down larger molecules into smaller building blocks. To help you remember this, if you've ever had a cat or a kitten who gets into mischief, the cat breaks things. Just like Dragon once in a while might jump up and interrupt our lesson and break the lesson. Cats break things. Catabolic is to break things down. So at the end of the day, if you take anabolism, all the anabolic reactions, plus catabolism, all the catabolic reactions, add them together, you get metabolism in your body. we're going to look in particular throughout the digestive system at some of the details of this. Probably don't need the S on the end of catabolism here. Sorry. Okay. So this, closely related to this idea, is the idea of what are monomers and polymers. If you're strong at English, you probably won't find this one too difficult. So, monomer equals relatively simple building blocks that can come together to form more complex molecules. And the way to understand monomer is simply to look at the word monomer. Mono means one, and mer basically means part or building block. So one building block. If you think about monopoly, the idea of monopoly is for one person to own the entire board. They become the winner. Mono means one. Monomer, one building block. We also have polymers. Okay. Polymers are simply chains of monomers stuck together. Okay. If you think of poly, like polygon, means many-sided. Poly is many building blocks. And when we're looking at digestion and how our body breaks things down and builds things up, there's many examples of monomers and polymers. So we can make a little T-chart here. We can talk about monomers, which come together to form your polymers. And one good example is your building blocks, amino acids. You get a chain of amino acids that come together to form the polymer called protein. So proteins are simply a bunch of amino acids joined together. You also have something you learned about in grade 11, nucleotides, which we have 5 different flavors between DNA and RNA. So A, T, G, C, and U. Those nucleotides come together to form a chain, which we can call DNA, or RNA specifically on whether it has a T or a U in it. More general, we call them nucleic acids. Then we can also look at sugars. We have monosaccharides, saccharide for sugar, and they come together. You've probably read this on lots of food packages. Polysaccharides, a chain of sugars. And there's different types of chains. We could also represent this as pictures. We could have a bunch of individual things here. And then we could have it come together. We could have chains of them. And some of our chains can even be made up of mixtures of different monomers. Like that. So those are just some of the key monomers and polymers that we find throughout our body. And the question is, how does our body actually break them down and put them back together? One of the key ways is called a dehydration reaction. This is how we break it down. It's important to understand this because if our body wasn't able to break down molecules and then rearrange them and put them back together, if you ate a carrot, you'd end up looking like a carrot. Instead, you eat a carrot, our body breaks it down, puts it back together so that it looks like different molecules. Okay, so we're going to go through the dehydration reaction. This is an example of an anabolic reaction. In other words, building, or another fancy word for in English for bringing things together, synthesis reaction. And the way a dehydration reaction works, if you think about the term dehydration, what's it mean if you are dehydrated? Dehydration means loss of water. So, in this, a dehydration reaction or synthesis, sometimes people get lazy, just call it a dehydration reaction. Sometimes they're more specific and say dehydration synthesis equals a reaction that forms a bond between two molecules by removing an OH from one and an H from another. Basically what it does is it takes water out and produces water as a reactant. And, well, if it's dehydration, how is it making water? Well, if you think about it, when you are sweating, your body's releasing water. Water's a product. But the effect on you personally is that you're dehydrated. So if we look at this as an equation, we could have some sort of fancy molecule. Sorry, I keep hitting the shift button with my elbow. You could have some sort of fancy molecule X. As long as on its end it has an OH group. And then you have another molecule Y, and it has an H group on its end. In a dehydration synthesis, what happens is the OH group, the H group, are joined to form H2O, and where they come out, X actually forms a bond with Y, building a polymer or a chain. That's a dehydration synthesis. If you have any questions about that's not very clear and you're watching the video, you can come ask me in class. Right now, I'm just going to stop and pause here for a moment. We're going to break the video and go to part 2. Thank you.